So I've got the beach quilt here. I've got the grass area. I've got the quilt rolled so it'll be out of my way when I work back and forth. And what I'm doing now is I'm just stitching down with invisible thread areas of the collage quilt, landscape quilt, so that then I can move on to do Inktense and embellishments, and then come back and do thread painting without worrying about messing up any of my earlier work. Because up till this stage, I just had a dot of glue holding things in place. Now, right now, I am using Superior Threads, and I like this because it's a monofilament. Now, this one is the smoky color. I'm using clear because I'm in light, medium to light areas. I like this because it doesn't stretch as much as nylon, but you could have YLI. Now, it is made of nylon, or at least it was when I got this spool, but you can also use that. So just any clear monofilament that you can zigzag. I've got it on a nice loose zigzag because I don't have to worry about keeping it from fraying. I don't have to worry. I just have to tack it down so that as I do further things on this quilt, it won't become tucked under or torn up in any way, lifted up. So I'll just go back to, I've got a zigzag foot on there, and I'm ready to go. Just a nice relaxed zigzag stitch. And I take it easy with these little points of grass because I don't want to make a mistake on lifting one up or catching it upside down. And sometimes I will go sideways and keep it moving. But with this, honestly, with all these little bits of grass, I'm just going to go straight up and down so that I make sure I don't accidentally fold something under. Okay. And I'll just show you real quickly that it really is virtually invisible. Start back on this side. And I don't worry about keeping it exactly on the grass or on the side of the grass. I pretty much just cover the whole area in long strips. And that way I manage to hold everything down because there are little bigger pieces of background and stuff that need to be stitched down as well. This is right near the edge where it's going to be cut off, so it's fine if I just do it in a straight line. Normally I try to follow the edge of whatever, you know, the shape of whatever piece of fabric is there, but this is on right on the edge. As you can see, the Superior polyester monofilament thread is doing beautifully. Hasn't broken once yet. But you also notice I'm taking it smooth and slow. I'm in no rush. This is easy, mindless work. In fact, if I weren't talking to you, I'd be listening to an audio book or have something in the background on the television to listen to. So it's just very relaxing work. So I have been working right along, zigzagging this, and now I'm working on the striations of the water. And I work in the direction that the seams, the edges are going. Makes it easier. Okay. Make sure you wind plenty of bobbins because you will go through bobbins faster than you expect doing zigzag stitching. The thread is so invisible that I find that I have to look in the light to see if there's a shine to actually be able to spot it. As long as the fabric's not too dark, I will use the invisible, the clear invisible on it. Once it gets too dark, then I'll go ahead and switch to smoky color. You're just doing the edges. You don't have to do in the center. You're just wanting to make sure it stays connected. Now I've changed the thread to the smoky so I can finish the last of the dark tacking down. Okay, I think I just have one more seam to do and then we'll be done. Okay. I think I've stabilized. Look, nope, there's another seam. You have to keep looking because it's easy to miss them when you're going back and forth between the dark, smoky, and the clear. You don't want to miss one. That's important to start the next phase making sure you've got everything carefully tacked down. All right. So now I am going to give it a good pressing. I turned the temperature down on my iron because I don't want to melt any fiber, especially where I have them piled up rather deeply. Give it a good pressing so it will stretch back and lay flat, because some of that zigzagging can pull it up a little tightly. So I'm glad I turned my iron down, because if I leave it sit still very long, I feel a little bit of a drag, like it might be melting that poly just a touch. Who knows, it could be the glue that was on here first. Alright, so now all of this is caught. You can see I can run my hands along, nothing flips up, looking pretty good. So now I better get my Inktense and let's move on to the next step. All right, I'll be right back. I needed to take this moment to tell you that the next part of the video that I had recorded didn't quite work out like planned. I recorded too long of a section, which converted it to a data file, which made it unusable for me. So I just wanted to tell you really quickly what I had done during that section. I used the Inktense blocks and a paintbrush and then a Textile Medium mixed 2 parts Textile Medium to 1 part water, and just did a light wash over the areas like the water coming in, different areas where I wanted a light touch of color without using any kind of brush strokes or pencil marks. And so I worked on that, got all of those done, let them dry, and also just to tell you, the blocks, I would take the brush with the medium and water and wet the block to get the ink off of it, then put it into the little pot right there in the box of blocks. And so I made a little pool of the ink and thinned it out a lot. That ink is very intense. And then I did the light wash over the quilt. So now we're ready to do some more specific and close-up marking on the quilt. And for this, I'll use the Inktense pencils. Okay, I have let the quilt dry, and I'll show you how the marks got a lot more subtle. And see how this is just kind of a little light watercolory. I really do. I'm very happy with that. I like that. This came out a lot more subtle, but it gave some good definition, I think, and blending of the skies. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out this morning with my Inktense pencils. And one thing you'll know when you get your Inktense pencils, you have a pencil called outliner. It is not made of ink. It is a more graphite pencil and acts as sort of a, you outline it, but it also slows down or helps prevent the inks from bleeding into the adjoining fabric. It's not meant to be perfect with that, but it will help you. So you could always, do a little line of the outliner, then fill in with the Inktense. But I'm going to keep that separate to remind myself that it is not going to help me blend. So what I'm doing is I'm coming here and I'm deepening. I'm using a deep indigo, and I'm coming in here because right where the clouds are the brightest peek throughs, they tend to have the darkest above them, and that gives it a much more dramatic effect. So I'm coming in here and I'm going to slightly bring it just over the edge of the light fabric. So as we talked about yesterday, blending in that fabric so you're not just staring at where one color fabric meets the other. And then I'm going to come in here where this dark swath is and kind of shade it so it helps these areas, because remember I said in nature there are very few hard and fast lines. Usually things are shaded. So anywhere like this dark, I will come up here. And I noticed today after I let the fabric dry, it was a little ripply. So I took and turned my iron up to 7 this time and did a good press of it. At this point, when I see it get ripply, I would love to be able to starch it. But unfortunately, that's going to defeat the process because I don't want to take a chance that the starch would prevent this color from really soaking into the fabric. And I want to make sure that it does that. Okay. So this is bridging the gap between the darks and the lights, giving an extra oomph, an extra little punch to some of the colors. And I'm just looking at my original here that's giving me clues to where to put the color. Okay. And where I have the dark color on the fabric, it's a good thing I can emphasize that with these Inktense also. I see right here I didn't stitch it down with my invisible thread, so I will go back to that at some point and work on that. And I'm using a dry Inktense. Another thing to remember is never sharpen your Inktense if you have wet the tip, if you've used it wet, because then it will be, the ink in this will be very wet and you would waste a good bit of that tip. And these pencils aren't cheap, so you don't want to waste any of that. Now I'm going to go into a darker brown to come down into this just a touch. I want to now bring the sun yellow, and I'm going to bring it down onto the black areas to show where it highlights these black areas. And this is the horizon, the buildings and such. And you can see in the photo I'm using, you can see where it brings. And I'm going to make streaks up like this because that's how the sun looks. It's below the horizon and it is shining up. So I'm going to bring some of those yellow streaks up. You see now why you do the zigzag stitching down before you start this. But see how I'm blending in, and hopefully you can see that. I'm blending in these different colors so that there's no bold stop line. Okay, I'm going to go back to my bark color. No, that's deep indigo. Go back to my bark color, come up into here. Get this edge done. Then I need an orange. Then I'm going to come here, and this is tangerine. And I'm going to come in. If I got Inktense, I wouldn't get anything smaller than a 24 pencil package, because I feel like you need now, and I can't afford yet to get a more expensive one, but that'll be in the future. I definitely would like to do that in the future. Okay, so what I'm doing is just pumping up a little of this color here and there, giving it a little more shading. Come in here with both tangerine and my sun yellow, and get a lot of good color here, just barely touching the edge of that black. Then I'm going to take my white and Inktense and give a little highlight right here on this color, and this is to bring in the little peaks of sun that I'm seeing, to give it that little extra brightness. The sun comes through in little bits and dribs and drabs. Okay. Put a little bit of white right under there. Need to do a little bit more sharpening of this. So I'm doing dry pencil now, because with the pencil I'll go over it with a brush pen that has a mixture of 1 part water and 2 parts of the medium. I also notice right down here I want some white reflection, and right down here a little white reflection. And then of course I want the white on the edge of the water here. A little bit right here. Okay. Then I'll come in to these lighter areas in the sand. I'll come into these lighter areas and give them the little striations and streaks. I wish they put 2 white pencils, because I do use a lot of white. It's nice to be able to come back in and give it some good highlights. Because see, nothing is exact at all. And so it's good to be able to come in and smooth things over. Trying to blend things together. Okay, let's see. Over here, I need some white highlights. I'm adding a new piece of lighter blue here because I'm not very happy with the light area that I had. Okay, I had this light area up here and it was too light. It kept bothering me. And I kept looking back at my original to kind of see how best to handle that, and I think this is it. Alright, so now I feel better about that sky. I can come in with the deep indigo. I can come in with the deep indigo and blend it, being careful because remember I haven't stitched this down yet. In fact, let me quickly stitch this down. I still have the thread in place. Let me stitch this down really quickly. I'm back, and I also sewed down a couple little other areas that I realized I had skipped. So hopefully things are better now. Alright, so now that I have the new sky put in, then I will come in here with my deep indigo and give it some streaking and blending it as well. I like using the pencils. It's a lot of fun because it's kind of like coloring with a crayon, and you can put the color exactly where you want it. Alright, I'll go up here, touch here with some of this deep indigo. So keep your little pencil sharpener handy, but be careful how you sharpen these because you are throwing away a little shred of ink every time. Some people save their sharpenings so that they can use those as part of the inks, but I don't have time to be that frugal right now. Maybe another time. But I can certainly understand if they do a lot of drawing and watercolor work, how you would want to take very good care of these. Alright, now I've done enough of this sky to get an idea. Oh, I do want to do one more thing. Let me see, I do believe I have a gray here. Let me find my gray. Here's a charcoal gray. Here is an ink black. Okay. I'm going to take the ink black and put it in some of the deepest of these colors. I think that is one of the best ways to develop the contrast of your art. Have an area where you've got a deep black and areas where you have a bright white or shade of that. So don't forget your contrast, because that's what will bring the picture alive. Now I just accidentally ran my black ink over my highlight here, and I just don't want it that dark. So I have an art gum eraser. These are the best. It's a good old art gum eraser, and I went in and erased that. I might get a little color, but not as much as if I had left it. So I'm going to go in here and darken what I can. Give it just a little touch. You don't go too heavy. Anytime I see a piece of invisible thread hanging up, let's go ahead and get that trimmed. Alright. Okay, then I need a little bit of this black here. I need some more of this black down here. Even though I have black fabric, I want to add some of the ink black. And that'll give it very deep color. Right here along the shore, I'm going to add, especially where the invisible thread made the needle made the little needle marks. It's good to go back over those with this Inktense, especially up in here where it really looks black. Okay, a little bit here in this wave, here, a little bit here, a little bit here. Okay, I'm looking to where I can really add it, and then little touches of it along the beach, like it's little pieces of organic material. And see, this is the nice part about Inktense. It would be very hard to do this with fabric and thread. It's much easier to do it with the Inktense, and you get a nice smooth look. Alright, put that back. Charcoal gray. Okay, I wanted some little clouds showing little stripes and movement here. Alright, so now I'm going to take a little break from coloring and get my pen, and this is a paintbrush that I told you about that you can fill the reservoir, and I'll show you that. You fill the reservoir right here, 2/3 Textile Medium, 1/3 water. So this makes it so much easier to get the color activated. Just remember, especially when you're using a dark color, dip it in the water often, clean that brush. You don't want your colors mixing, and give the brush a little squeeze so you get some of your textile medium and water down to the tip. Clean it off, especially when you're going from dark to light fabrics. But go over everywhere that you did some of the Inktense drawings. Here is my brush, and in some areas where I just want the white paint to come alive, I'll just use my brush on that so I don't get any of the darker undertones. Okay. All right. So now back with this pen. Sometimes you have to rinse your brush and dab it a little bit because the color wants to carry. So just be careful. Don't contaminate one color area with another. I like how the yellow bled down onto the black. And remember, the Inktense will stay mostly where you first put it. So if you have to, and I'm gently squeezing to continue pumping the medium and water down to the tip. Then I brush off my tip frequently so I don't cross-contaminate my colors. Since I've got so much to cover, I'm going to take and put some water and some textile medium in a container. Okay. All right. And then I can take my brush, and I think I'll be able to work a little quicker. This brush had white bristles yesterday, but the Inktense, it must be a type of bristle that absorbed the ink. So now I have blue bristles. All right, so I mix this up. Let's see if this works a little faster, because I did do a lot of highlighting. Yeah, I think this works a little faster, and I like that. Don't put too much medium on like I just did, because, and keep rinsing that brush. If you put too much medium on, then your fabric will get stiff, and you don't want that. one thing you have to do also is practice when you're using your Inktense pencils to know just the right amount of pressure to put on your pencil, because you'll find that it'll either leave too much ink or not enough behind. So, whoops, I didn't want this. Oops, let me get some of this up. Hold on, guys. Ugh, I might have to replace this yellow fabric. I did not want any dark in that. And unfortunately, I was not being careful and I ran right up onto it. Get a clean paper towel. Keep a roll of paper towels handy. You will need it. Now, what I may wish to try, I can try to save it by putting some more yellow up here. And then it wouldn't hurt to have a little white. Thank goodness for white Inktense. I might be able to save it. I think I can. Alright, I'm going to come in with just some water. Let's see if I can save that. I think I just did. Woo! That was worrisome. That was worrisome. Okay. I'll come in here with a little bit of brown. And activate that brown. Okay. So don't just wipe it all over each fabric. Look to where you put it and just wipe it there. Put more medium here and activate all that dark black. Once I've done this, activated this black, rinse your brush good. And when your water gets too muddy, get some clean water. Now that my brush is nice and clean, I'm going to come back over here, do some more of this. Got some yellow to activate there and some white. Okay, brush is still relatively clean. Let's see if I can activate some of this. Take up any excess of the Textile Medium. I don't want my fabric. If the fabric were to get, the main reason is you don't want your fabric getting too stiff. It would make it very hard to, when it comes time to quilt it. So that's why I'm worried. Okay, let's see, do I have some more blacks in here? Okay. I like mopping up the excess medium so it just doesn't get too... Because where you put the ink is where the ink will develop. Now, when I mop up excess, yes, it does pull some of the color off. But I'm trying to be a little subtle here, so I don't mind if I pull up a little bit. I can always come back and put more, But the thing that's hard to do is it's hard to take it off, as you've seen. Okay. And what I'll do also is I will take another picture of this one and put it beside stage 5, so you can actually again see what did the Inktense bring to the work, because I think that's important for you to really get a chance to visualize it, because it's subtle and that's what I want it to be, but it will make a difference, especially from the beginning, from before to after. I want you to see that difference. Rinse out my brush again. Dab up the excess. Get a new piece of paper towel. I grabbed a whole roll because I knew that I would need it. Okay. I just was wondering, my grommet's sitting underneath this table. I wonder if he wonders why I'm sitting here talking to myself. Do dogs wonder those things or not? Who knows? Now when this is completely dry, and if I'm happy with it, then what I will do is iron it again. And if you're worried at all about your iron getting dirty, then feel free to take a scrap piece of muslin, lay it over this, and then give it a nice high heat iron, pressing. And that'll help it lay flat again, plus it'll heat set the inks so that they're extra set. Alright, so this is looking pretty good. I'll put my brush in the water to rinse it out. When you're going over your light areas, use a fresh place in your paper towel so you don't transfer ink. What do you think? I think it's working. Now I'm going to move down into the grassy area here and see if I can give a punch to some of these seagrasses. I'm going to get my outliner pencil. That's deep indigo. Here's my outliner, and I'll get my greens and a tan. And let's see what I can do here. Let me get a little more brown. Okay. So before I do the grasses, I'm going to go in and put some shadow marks in some of this. See if I can bring this alive a little bit. And maybe even little areas in here. Okay? Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. I think you can. But I'm going to give some shadow lines and go all the way up with a shadow line. Come right in behind here. And I'm just going to put all my shadow lines to the left. The sun's coming from back there, and well, I can't quite do it from that side. So I'll just put them here. As long as they're uniform, the eye will say, ah, yes. So, giving a little bit of shading to this sand dune area. And remember, I added this. It wasn't in the inspiration photo. I added it to give me something exciting to look at. So do you see my shadow lines? Alright, so I've used that one. Now I'll come in here and kind of here and there do a little shading on the, and mostly I'm trying to reach to the background in between the grasses to give, and then I can go on some of the grasses, especially the ones where they have a little bit of the brownish tones already. Then here is a third one, and I will give, in fact I forgot this area. I need to come back here. Remember, especially concentrate on the edges. You want to blend things in. You don't want a piece of fabric just sitting out there in the middle. It's like here I am, like an egg. Now let me find my outliner again. It's my ink black. Bark. Well, now bark would be good. Let me get this dark bark down in at the base here. Okay. All right. Okay. With my outliner, I'm just going to do a little bit of lining. Remember, it will not bleed because it is not ink. It is a graphite and kind of acts as a blocking, but it would kind of be nice to give it some definition without it bleeding. So I think this would be good. Give a little definition in some of these areas. Some of the areas they just get a little blurry, so. Alright, now I'm going to go in with my lightest, and I used to think I would go dark to light, but what you find out is it's hard to do a light over a dark. So I learned in my last landscape class, start with your lights, that way you've set where they are, and then you can go back in with your darks. And do not cover up your lights, but accessorize your lights. And I've even got, this is a kind of avocado, which will give a good medium neutral. Oh, in fact, I forgot my highlights over here. I'm not going to give these much because they're shorter than the other ones, so I'm assuming they're not going to get as much of the light. Then here's a medium light here and there just to give it a little bit of pizzazz. And then now my darkest of the green. Alright, now let's bring this to life and see what we did. This to me is always the most fun. Bring it down, bring you in just a little bit. Let's see what this does. Keeping my water handy nearby so I don't contaminate. Oh, look how that just brings that to life. That's what I love about Inktense. In my water, dry it off. Okay, now we'll work from left to right and let's bring this alive. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? That is amazing. The difference when you add the Inktense is amazing. I didn't want to bring the dark from the bottom up too high. And don't overbrush it because you don't want to turn it to mud. because it is an ink and it will act like an ink and spread, but you don't want it to cover up some of the areas that you're trying to keep more distinct. So, what do you think? I think that is amazing, the difference that makes. Alright, there was one thing I noticed that I wanted to do, and that was to give a little bit of an orange look over here and have it kind of transfer that way and a little bit this way, barely a little, and a little touch more here. So now I will take my brush and my medium and go over these areas that I did the Inktense, and I'll give it a good brushing because I don't want the little pencil marks to show. I just want that washed look. So let me come in here and get up any excess. I'm going to come in now with a little touch of a yellow. And since it's already wet there, that yellow will spread very easily. Then I will come back over this area with a little white. It got a little too dark. So come in here with some white. Then clean my brush really good. Wipe it off. And come carefully over the white. Oops. Okay. All right. Now I want to come back in with a medium brown, not the bark. This is willow. And I want to do a lot of this kind of thing because this was the debris area left behind when the tide went out. So I just want a bunch of dots of color and little bits here and there of debris. Okay, even in a little bit of the light areas, it's got some debris. Okay, and then bring this down a little bit, uneven a little. This is a shadow from all the buildings. So I'm first going to work on that shadow. That's good. Then I rinse my brush, wipe it off, and this is where I think I'll use these. I think I'll come in here and just paint these little debris dots. squeezing the brush to get out the medium and the water. And don't forget, it won't just flow out on its own. You kind of have to squeeze it out. Now that I've got that area wet, I'm going to see if I can't do a better job putting more debris dots. Yeah, because see, it more easily comes off the brush. I mean the pencil. Where it's wet, it more easily will leave a dot behind. See that? Because the area is wet now. Let me go back over this a little bit more with some medium and water. Now, let's see. Because you just kind of want... Oh, look at that. That works really easily now. Okay, leave plenty of organic debris because the tide brings up shells and maybe pine straw and dirt and seaweed. I like it. I like it, like it, like it. I'll put some in here. Okay, I really like it. I do see one problem. Right over here, this orange is looking a little muddy. So I'm going to pull this out because remember, once it dries, that's it. Then I think I'm going to go over it with a touch of white. Let me lighten it up just a bit. Yeah, that's better. That's better. Lighten it up with a little bit of the white Inktense. I see this area right in here that is a little too bright orange. So let me tone this down right here. Okay, then let me take my medium brush, come in here, okay, and then get it out of the lighter areas if I can. Okay, good. Alright, back in the water brush. Now I'm coming here with the brush and mute down some of these dots. As they're drying, they're looking a little too defined. So I'm going to mute them down because you're not supposed to really be able to see what it is. It's just the hint that there's shells or whatever on the beaches. So we'll just mute them down a little. Mute down over here. And that's why it's good to take your time to look at what you're doing. I'm getting the color out of this brush. But it's good to take your time, look at what you're doing, watch it as it goes through the different variations of stages. and I think you'll like it. I'm going to go back in with a white Inktense and bring in, emphasize some lighter areas. I noticed the sky. Now I know it's wet and it's darker when it's wet, but I also, just like I came in and did highlighting with black in the sky to deepen some of the clouds, I'm going to come back in now with white and give some definition too. Can't have too much of any one thing or it takes away from the beauty of it. So where you see it's too dark, you can always come back and lighten it. If you don't have contrast, it ends up looking like mud, and you don't want that. You've worked too hard at this to have it look like mud. Okay. Especially if the background is a little damp still, I might not put much water on the white. And the reason I don't is because you can lose it. It's a delicate little dye and you don't want to lose it. So what are you thinking? I think right now I need to let this dry. Then I will take a picture of it so that you can see it, to see if you think that what I've got is working. I can see a problem right here. Let me do this. This is looking too light. It's too far back in the background. Let me see if I can find my charcoal gray. Here it is. And I notice in my image that I'm using as reference that it looks like there's lines going across this way and a little line going across this way. So let me do that. Let me darken in this because this is getting too far away for you to see good enough. And in fact, this gets pretty dark here. So let me darken this up and it leads across to this. Okay. All right. Because you want to make sure that you've got that perspective, and shading can really give you the perspective that something's moving away. A little bit of dark above these lights, give it that contrast. Alright, so I'm going to wipe off my brush. Come in here very carefully, especially I'm going to do this area by the white first. I don't want to rub the gray into the white. I don't care if it rubs on things closer around it, like right across here where I darkened it. That's fine. But I want to know where that ink is going. Okay, then come back with my paper towel, get off a little bit of the excess. Do not go over, don't go onto the white with your paper towel because you'll spread that ink right onto the white as well. I'm going to take the gray, do a little bit more over this white in that linear type fashion. Darken this down right here, just a little more. Darken under here just a little. And now take this brush and medium and just touch just where I put the Inktense gray. Okay, come back with a little clean area. Let me see if I can find a little tiny clean area. Get a little bit of that off because I just want a lighter gray on the top, not too dark. Ah, very good. That's the thing you have to remember when you're working with Inktense. protect your clothing, protect your surface. I want to take and put a person on the beach, walking down the beach. So about right here, I'm going to take my Inktense, the ink black, the darkest dark I have, and do a person. And I have to keep them in perspective. And when I say a person, you know it's a person, but it just looks like a thin little oblong blob. But there's my person walking down the beach. Then up here, I'll have two more people walking on the beach. And then over here, I've got two people standing on the beach. And something down here, something down here, something down here, and then something down here. Okay. And very carefully, so I don't spread the people to where they don't look like people anymore, I'm just going to carefully squeeze some medium into my brush and carefully just brush enough liquid on to develop that color, but to not make it run everywhere. Just very carefully. And see, you can make the people bigger too, just by using the ink. Okay, so there, let it dry. If I like it, I'll press it and they'll be set. Then it'll be time to do thread painting and embellishing. We're getting there, people.